Welcome back to the channel, everybody, and today we are talking about the case of Mark Redwine. This is the story of a teenage boy who found disturbing pictures of his own father, and when he found out, he'd never be seen alive again. So this is 13-year-old Dylan Redwine, and in 2013, he was on a court-ordered visit to his father, Mark. Now, 59-year-old Mark Redwine was far from the idea of a good father. Mark and Dylan's mother, Elaine, had a very rough relationship. But even through that, they managed to have two children together, two boys by the name of Corey and Dylan. To no one's surprise, the two boys never really formed a good relationship with their father, and the feeling was definitely mutual. Mark never attempted to get to know his boys better, be a good father, or anything of the sort. Eventually, Mark and Elaine went to court to settle a dispute that they had over custody of the boys. When their dispute was resolved, Elaine maintained primary custody of the boys, with Mark getting court-ordered visits from them. Mark just really didn't want anything to do with his sons, and it got so bad to the point where the court had to order him to spend time with them. While the boys were happy that they got to stay with their mother, they definitely were not looking forward to the forced visits that they had with Mark. One day, on a court-ordered visit with their father, the boys decided to use his computer. Curious to what their father did on his free time, they started looking around. They ended up stumbling upon some very strange files. In Mark's recently deleted folder, they found some pictures that were disturbing. Now, Mark was a kinky guy, but not in the way that you'd think. There were countless photos of Mark in suggestive poses and some questionable attire. Mark was dressed up as a woman, wearing diapers, and smearing an unknown brown substance all over his mouth and face. Considering this is the same substance that was in the diaper in the photos, I think you know what substance I'm talking about. The boys were completely shocked by what they found. They took pictures to keep on their cell phone just to use as proof for later. The boys came to an agreement that it was probably in their best interest to not let their father know what they just found. After their visit, the boys returned to their mother and went about life as normal. A few months later, Dylan was ordered to visit his father again, and when he left, his mother had no idea this was the last time she would ever see him alive. When Dylan arrived to his father's home, he just wanted to get this visit over with as quickly as possible. At some point during his stay, the conversation of these photos came up between Dylan and his father. Dylan's brother Corey later told the media that Dylan was not the type to be silenced, and if he felt that he wanted to confront his father over the photos, that's exactly what he was going to do. This conversation made Mark so angry, he felt that there was no way the world could find out about his extracurricular activities. Mark then brutally attacked Dylan, strangling him and beating him until he couldn't move. When Mark was sure that Dylan had passed, he started planning his next moves. Mark lived near a state park, and in his head, that was the perfect place to get rid of Dylan's body. Mark loaded up Dylan's body in the bed of his truck and drove out to the wooded area. Mark then dug a shallow grave, buried Dylan, and left. After this, Mark pretended that Dylan went missing on his own free will. After finding out, Dylan's mother was worried sick and immediately got the police involved. A search was launched near Mark's home, and many members of the community came together to try to find Dylan. After weeks of unsuccessful searches, Dylan remained missing, and a lot of people were beginning to lose hope. During their search and investigation, however, the police interviewed Mark a handful of times. Each time, Mark seemed annoyed and disinterested at the idea of finding his son and bringing him home safely. This just dug a deeper and deeper hole for Mark, as he didn't seem like a father who wanted his son back. 3 years ended up passing, and it was starting to look like Mark was going to get away with the murder of his own son. However, one day, a couple that was hiking the same park where Dylan was buried stumbled upon what they thought were the remains of a human skull. Sure enough, when police arrived to the park, they successfully identified the remains to be those of Dylan. Mark was immediately arrested as the police finally had the evidence they needed to take him in. During his trial, Mark maintained his innocence. Mark seemed to be a little bit more interested in keeping his own name clean rather than getting justice for his deceased son. The jury took note of Mark's cold and uninterested demeanor and recognized that Mark knew a lot more than what he was telling. The conclusion of his trial saw the jury return a guilty verdict, but Mark still maintained his innocence. Even after the tons and tons of evidence against him, Mark never admitted to taking the life of his own son. 9 years after the death of Dylan, Mark was sentenced to 48 years in prison, where he will most likely die behind bars. Thank you guys for watching today's video. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment if you found this video to be interesting. I hope you have a good rest of your day, and I will see you on the next one.